Morning, everyone. Thanks, Elliot. Great energy and great to be here. So we put this webinar together today to share some findings from a recent white paper that we've developed. We call that white paper Taking Aim, Generative AI Maturity in the Public Sector. And to give a bit of background, in 2024, we've developed a generative AI maturity framework for our private sector clients. We've designed that for industry leaders to be able to assess their AI maturity within the business units, within the organizations. And so at the start of this year, we've carried out some additional research, and we looked specifically into the public sector, into the UK public sector. We spoke to digital and technical leaders across different parts of government, and we wanted to adapt that framework to take into consideration the specific public sector aspects. So to give an idea of what the next 30 minutes or so are going to be about, we're going to share a little bit about who we are, what we think puts us in the right position to talk about AI maturity, and then go through the framework and our findings in a lot more detail. As with all of our previous webinars, we're going to finish up and share some specific artifacts that everyone that is joining in today could take and start implementing within their business, whether they are private or public sector. So let me introduce myself quickly. My name is Nadav. I'm the Director for Product and Strategy at Elsewhen. I have worked in product management for over 15 years, many of those within regulated environments, specifically financial services, insurance, as well as media and other industries. Within Elsewhen, I lead our product team and our public sector team. Gabriel, who is on the call as well, is part of my team and is going to introduce himself in a minute. I want to talk briefly about who Elsewhen is. So Elsewhen is a digital product consultancy that is based in London, and we work based off the mission of accelerating innovation to solve business critical problems. We are about 150 strong across design, engineering, product, and our delivery teams based across the UK. And in fact, recently just been selected as one of the UK's leading management consultancies. This is our first year, and our second year running as one of Europe's fastest growing companies. So a really small and nimble team that is focused on delivering great products. What sets us apart from others is that as a consultancy, we really can implement end-to-end. The consultancy is vertically integrated within strategy, design, and engineering, all on equal footing. And what it puts us in a position is that when we advise our clients, we know that our advice is implementable. We can take things and build. Specifically within the public sector, our services are available through G-Cloud and through the AI DPS. I want to take another moment and talk about why we focus on AI. So specifically with AI, I believe that with generative AI, intelligence itself is now a commodity. The differentiator for our clients and for public bodies is about shaping that commodity to help solve the right problems in the right time, right? And you see a bunch of logos here. These are businesses that have worked with us. And when we talk about what we do within that space of generative AI, we often help our clients implement one of three different solutions. Some of them, we do a lot of work in the space of RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, which is effectively a way to blend proprietary data with AI to reduce hallucinations and deliver accurate information. We build co-pilots And then for the last 6 months or so, we're focusing a lot. We had a webinar just last week talking about autonomous agents, autonomous AI agents. And so enough about us, and I want to move closer into the content of this webinar and maybe give a bit of market context to why we think the public sector is ready to start thinking about AI maturity. So when we look at the private sector first, we see about 80% of Fortune 500 companies that have integrated tools like ChatGPT within only just 9 months since its launch. So really, really quick pace of adoption within the private sector. We see that also being reciprocated with corporate investment. The level of investment in AI has gone through the roof over the last couple of years. And all of us within the private sector are completely absorbed with understanding where we can find opportunities, how we can create more and more opportunities for businesses to operate more effectively, more efficiently with AI. Now, this still isn't necessarily the case with the public sector. And maybe just one data point to kind of put a bit of color to that. We've seen that AI represents only 74 use cases across more than 7,000 digital services listed on Gov.uk. This is just over 1% of the services being run using AI today. On the flip side of that, that is the size of the opportunity we see, right? So we see large enthusiasm and excitement around the public sector to start adopting AI and moving from a state where today only about 20% of government bodies are considering or having meaningful AI-related strategies to over 60% of them looking to do that in the very near future. We also see that as a huge opportunity to create efficiency gains. So if you're moving from that 1% of workflows being run with AI, the potential for future efficiency gains going all the way up to a third of civil service tasks that could be automated with generative AI, that would then obviously is going to result in large savings, right? So we're talking about £38 billion that could be saved using AI by 2030. And of course, government is doing a lot, right? We've seen quite a few changes happening across government to accommodate the science and technologies. I wanted to call out here two papers that I think are interesting examples. One is the Artificial Intelligence Playbook for the UK government, and the other is the AI Opportunities Action Plan. Both are great documents and very detailed, very comprehensive, and equally long and could sometimes be difficult to implement, right? And so what we really wanted to do here is to focus on the opportunity to realize tangible benefits of generative AI. And we want to do that by creating, next slide, please, creating those practical frameworks to drive meaningful adoption, implementation, and execution. How our framework is built. So in order to do that, and I'm a big believer in delivering frameworks that are easier to understand to all of our clients, public or private sector, we've developed that simple framework. That framework is built on the idea that we can look at 5 different areas, which we represent using 25 different questions. It only takes about 15 to 25 minutes to complete a short online survey. And we use that survey within our consulting teams to create an understanding of where a business department, a government department might be on their AI maturity journey. We then create a reflection of that, a detailed report that is shared with our clients. And that covers the 5 key areas of the framework. So these are the opportunities around AI, the level of data readiness, the technical infrastructure, the state of model development, and especially important within the public sector, everything that has to do with ethics and risk management. all of those things are coming together, and they help us really assess where a body might sit on that maturity level. I'm not going to go into much detail about about the ladder itself, because Gabriel is going to cover that in a second. I just want to give a really quick example, practical example for how we helped a FTSE 10 company to move on that ladder. So over the past 12 months, we've supported that business moving from the adoption stage, really early stage, into a full transformational stage on the AI maturity adoption. Starting with AI discovery and then building and scaling smaller POCs really helped us and helped that organization to solve the data readiness issue, to embed risk and governance into the processes, and overall streamline the operations with AI. The stage that they're currently at is that we are supporting them with truly transformative generative AI products. So generative AI is becoming part of the core offering, and they start implementing LLM as a charge and multi-agent systems, quite advanced on the maturity level. But that is a stage that they were not able to accommodate just a year ago. So with that in mind, I want to pause here and hand it over to Gaba. And Gaba is going to introduce himself and then take you through the framework in a lot more detail. Over to you, Gaba.
Thanks, Nadav. Morning, everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying the sun. As Nadav mentioned, my name's Gabriel. I'm a researcher here at Elsewhen. So I split my time on client projects, delivering multi-method research. So I've worked in industries such as advertising, aerospace, and financial services. I also spend some of my time researching kind of as part of internal initiatives. So recently was lucky enough to spend some time researching AI maturity in the public sector. And I guess that's kind of where I'm going to take you through today, kind of giving you a bit of a deeper dive into the framework that Nadav just outlined, as well as sharing some of the recommendations that our team and consultants pulled together. So that first dimension is opportunities, like Nadav mentioned. And I think our research showed that at the moment, AI opportunities in the public sector broadly fit under two buckets. The first one being productivity gains. And for a lot of people here, you probably know that generative AI is massively associated with productivity gains. This sort of leans into the idea that GenAI can augment or replace humans within certain processes, whether that be data analytics or customer service, and ultimately free them up for more high value strategic activities. So I think kind of that's a strong area within the public sector that GenAI could be used. Another one that we're really interested in is user experience. So we think GenAI can fundamentally transform the way the public sector interacts with citizens and the way that their employees work. And I think at the core of this is those sort of paradigms that Nadav mentioned at the start. Conversational interfaces, or you can think of those as chatbots, as well as co-pilots, really change the interaction models for users. And I think these provides a really interesting way forward. I think there's also some more future thinking opportunities. At Elsewhen, we've developed a concept called generative UI, which is the idea that GenAI can generate user interfaces in real time that cater to a user's needs or preferences. And this might be an interesting angle for accessibility, for example. So I think from that, there are some really convincing applications of GenAI in the public sector, but ultimately there is no one size fits all when it comes to AI opportunities. As with any good digital product, we must start with the business problem or user need, researching with users, obviously, for me. And so for those organizations looking to improve their AI opportunities maturity, we need to focus on the ability and processes that help organizations systematically identify, evaluate, and prioritize AI opportunities. And I think at the moment, the public sector is actually making good strides in this area. the recent AI opportunities plan, as well as the AI playbook, have outlined some clear processes and guidelines for public sector organizations to identify opportunities. So some really good progress there. Having said that, I think the critique of these is often that the frameworks are hard to act on at the coalface. So I guess our framework then tries to offer some more sort of practical solutions. And one of these might be workshops. So at Elsewhen, we work with our clients a lot through workshops. And specifically, an AI opportunities workshop could be a really useful tool for a public sector leader who's looking to address AI opportunities. This might be getting as many different leaders from across your organization into a room to collaborate around opportunities, and of course, look at how you can build the processes and capabilities for identifying opportunities in the future. So that kind of wraps up opportunities. And now moving on to data readiness. I think a lot of people listening might be thinking, we're talking about data readiness. We've been talking about data readiness in the public sector for years and years. And I think, unfortunately, the reality is that it's still very much the case that data readiness in the public sector remains low. There's that statistic on the slide there that over 60% of government bodies cited access to high quality data as a significant obstacle to implementing AI. And this kind of leans on the idea that a lot of people have heard of, which is that when it comes to AI, it's a case of rubbish in, rubbish out. If you have rubbish data, you're not going to get good outcomes from your AI. So ultimately, with AI, with data readiness, even the most advanced AI initiatives are likely to fall short of their potential. So what can organizations do? If you're looking to sort of get data ready for AI, I think there's a few sort of quite simple steps that organizations can get to. And this is where our framework comes in, offering some recommendations around these. So this could be high quality, clean and diverse data sets, strong data privacy and security, fresh, accurate and up-to-date data. API integrations offer the ability for generative AI to access more data or different functionalities, and robust data pipelines help with transparency and troubleshooting when it comes to Gen AI. So data readiness is important. Having said that, the move to generative AI from more traditional AI has brought with it a shift in thinking around data readiness. So, for example, retrieval augmented generation changes the way that AI now interacts with data. So we've shifted from having to prepare large structured data sets for machine learning, for example, to RAG, where retrieval of where models actually retrieve the relevant information in real time from often unstructured data sources, making data more accessible and reducing the need to have these really structured data sets. So I guess to wrap up data readiness there are foundations to fix, but at the same time, Gen AI does offer some innovative solutions to work around some of those data limitations that exist. Our third dimension is technical infrastructure. And our research here, I think, highlighted one of the common barriers facing any digital initiative in the public sector, and that's legacy technology. You can see that statistic on the screen there, which says 40% of government bodies cite outdated digital infrastructure as a key barrier limiting their ability to deploy AI. So sort of a bit of a fact, legacy technology is a key task for AI maturity, and arguably deserves its own webinar, and probably one we'll look at in the future. But I guess what we can think about right now is what sort of technical infrastructure should the public sector be looking for when it comes to generative AI? And the key here is really that those AI mature organizations have built technical infrastructures that scale to their AI initiatives. So they need to handle increasing data volumes and computation demands. And we're seeing some progress here. I know the Incubator for Artificial Intelligence is looking to bridge this by providing open source tools and fostering collaboration between different departments. But the reality is that's early days, and without scalability, the public sector risks falling behind and missing those opportunities to improve efficiency, reduce costs, improve user experience that we mentioned above. Our fourth dimension there is model development and evaluation. And this is really the way that organizations test, measure, select, and optimize different AI models. And obviously here we're talking about LLMs, large language models. And I think this has become a particularly significant conversation over recent months as proprietary models and open source models have increasingly converged in capabilities and performance. So this is where models created by the likes of OpenAI and Google are converging with open source models from the likes of Meta, or over recent weeks, we've seen lots of news around DeepSeek and their R1 model. So those models' capabilities are increasingly converging. And this means that when we are building AI or generative AI, we're no longer selecting the best model, the best performing model, but we're focusing on shaping models to fit specific tasks and objectives. For example, I would use a completely different model for creating copy for a website than I would for evaluating and creating code, for example. So ultimately, advanced model selection and development capabilities can lead to unique, high-performing AI solutions that differentiate an organization from competitors. So what can public sector leaders do? It's worth mentioning again, there's some progress here. So the AI Opportunities Action Plan outlines the need for modular, adaptable AI, and also outlines the need for models to be updated, replaced, and reconfigured. So a lot of progress in this area from sort of those higher level frameworks, but it's still early days. And I think there's a few other things that organizations could think about. A defined approach for evaluating and selecting models, clear performance metrics. There's a whole bunch of metrics out there for assessing LLMs and generative AI, the capability to change and update models, which we just spoke about, robust testing and validation, and approaches to optimize model inference and efficiency. So some takeaways there around model development. Our final dimension is all about ethics, compliance, and risk. And unsurprisingly, this has been a big focus point for the public sector. You know, ethical, compliant, and risk-managed AI is going to help build trust amongst users, amongst citizens, amongst wider stakeholders in the public sector. And that is essential for widespread AI adoption and ultimately integration into public service delivery. And again, this is somewhere the public sector has been hot on ever since the launch of ChatGPT. The thread of responsible, ethical, compliant AI runs through the AI Opportunities Plan. It runs through the AI Playbook. I think 3 of the 10 principles in the AI Playbook are related to this sort of dimension of ethics and risk. And I think actually, here the public sector sits in a much better position than the private sector when it comes to risk. But I think there are some areas that the public sector could work on, and I think the framework that we've pulled together pulls together some of these more advanced areas of ethics, compliance, and risk. So one might be bias management. How can you ensure the fairness of AI? It's a really crucial element, especially when it comes to the public sector and dealing with citizens. Transparency and explainability in Gen AI. Transparency is where users know that they're interacting with a product that uses Gen AI or AI tool, and explainability is the ability to show a user how AI got to that output or that answer. If you've used deep research from ChatGPT, you can go in and look at all the steps that it's taken to get to the output. And that final one is having a clear approach to handling potential errors or harmful outputs. So here there's a really sort of dominant concept around human in the loop, which is the idea that no AI output would take place or happen without a human first validating the outputs of that. So that kind of takes you through all those dimensions and some of the findings that we've made in our research, and maybe some recommendations for you to take forward. But I guess, where does this leave us for the public sector as a whole? And I guess I'm going to offer, just whilst we're wrapping up, kind of some final thoughts and high-level thoughts around where the public sector is in terms of AI maturity. And I think, broadly speaking, the public sector sits in this exploration phase of our GenAI curve, maybe actually leading up to that adoption phase. We've seen that the public sector is actively running pilots and tests. I'm sure people have seen the gov.uk chat bot that was recently created, and the incubator for AI is also running a bunch of pilots. I think an interesting one at the Treasury. There's also been resources allocated to explore opportunities and develop frameworks. So we've talked extensively here about the AI Opportunities Plan, as well as the AI Playbook. However, why are they not higher up that scale? Well, ultimately, GenAI hasn't been embedded across departments, local authorities, and other government bodies. And I think our research sort of leans to expertise and learnings being isolated in innovative areas of government currently. And the reality is that the majority of public sector bodies are many, many steps behind implementing or executing on generative AI. So I guess the question is, how can the public sector move towards those more transformative areas of our curve? And I think the first and foremost, we should mention that this question shouldn't be tackled as a whole. Departments and teams need to assess the opportunities presented by AI, factor in the nuances and complexities that exist with that domain. And I think that's where our framework and survey fits in quite well. But in drawing some conclusions from our research, I think it points to a number of recommendations. I think that first one is department level ownership and innovation. So taking those frameworks, the AI Opportunities Plan, the AI Playbook, and translating that down to what that means at the coalface for the product team or the tech team at your organization. That second one, I think the research clearly shows that we need to prioritize technical infrastructure and data readiness. Those are like key risks for the public sector in achieving AI maturity. And that final one, which I've not really mentioned, but around tangible results and social value. I think those pilots and those POCs that are being developed, it would be great to see those deliver in terms of savings or in terms of user experience. And I think that really would create a momentum around generative AI in the public sector. So that's kind of me wrapped up. I'll hand back over to Nadav, who take us to the end.
Thanks, Gaba. That is a lot to take in, and I want to take a moment to pause here before I go and talk about what people on the call can do next. And in fact, the next thing to do, or the next logical step from here, I think, is to go online and read our white paper. So what we've covered here in the last 30 minutes or so was really just the tip of the iceberg. So we've mentioned at the start of this that there is a whole white paper that we put together around this topic. And the white paper really goes in much more detail into the challenges, the opportunities, and a roadmap for responsible generative AI implementation within the public sector. It is available online. I believe that we are sharing a link to that with people in the chat. And if not, do feel free to reach out on it, and we'd happily share a link. So that is the next obvious thing to do. The other thing, which would be a great step to take from here, is to go on our website and take the survey yourself. Like I said at the start of my things, it is a relatively short questionnaire to go through. It's quite fun to fill, and whether you submit it or not, it's a really good point to reflect on the different aspects of what we talked about in terms of maturity. I can guarantee that there is a human in the loop, and any form that's being submitted is being seen by our technical team and our consulting team. And what you can expect in return to that time is a PDF report being sent over to you, and an invitation to discuss your findings, our findings, in a bit more detail with one of our teams. So I guess that's kind of takes us back to the 30 minutes mark. So we are perfectly on time. Should we open for questions? Elliot, over to you.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was very, very concise and well put together, I must say. So some of the questions I believe you just already answered. So one of the questions was, what does the AIM report look like? How do you guys put it together? So maybe there is a bit more of a granular answer there, but I think you did cover a lot of that just now.
I can try and add a bit to that. So the report is, as any good consulting work, I believe, starts with a top-level summary of our understanding of, based on the information that's been provided throughout the survey. We try and create a top-level score for the organization that really puts them on that maturity ladder, right? And we then break our feedback across each of those 5 areas. Now, when I said there is a human in the loop in our process, there is actually more than just human in the loop, just one person in that loop. And we actually try to represent different angles of how to think about these models. So when we look at that submission, we look at it from a technical standpoint as well as from a strategic standpoint. And the report really is peppered with not just the direct findings from the questionnaires, but also with some high-level advice of how we think any organization, whoever filled that survey, can move up, not even within the ladder, but within the smaller dimensions, right? So within each dimensions, what can businesses do? What can organizations do to take that next step up? So overall, it's about 5 or 6 pages long PDF, quite easy to read, quite easy to actually socialize with other stakeholders within the business. Might be able to share an example at some point later.
Okay, great. And the next question, I think this is more for you, Gabriel. What are some of the ways AI can help with accessibility in the public services?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think I mentioned it sort of in some of the slides, but I'm not a designer or a user experience expert, but I think kind of we were chatting and kind of leans on this idea that we've created around generative UI. So GenAI could be used to sort of generate a user interface in real time. So if I take you through maybe a couple of examples, let's say someone with a visual impairment might be going onto the gov.uk website. Under this concept, GenAI could generate a larger font size for them in real time based on their preferences that they've maybe outlined at the start of their settings, giving that person a better user experience. Another example might be, I know with GDS guidelines, every product has to be available in Welsh. Now that probably is quite a slow and kind of person, manual process to translate that into Welsh. Maybe generative AI could be used to generate the Welsh translation of a product in real time. Maybe just another sort of solution around accessibility. So yeah, maybe a couple of examples there, but we've got a white paper all around generative UI, and I think I've only really touched the surface of how it works from a technical standpoint. But yeah, we've got a lot of thinking around that it could offer. Yeah.
Great. And the next one is, what can the public sector learn from the private sector in terms of AI?
Repeat that question again, Elliot. Sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, what can the public sector learn from the private sector in terms of AI?
That's an interesting question. I was thinking the other way around. What can the private sector learn from public sector? I think speed is really much at the essence here, right? And we see, I've noticed a question in the comments. Someone was asking, what do you think is doing generative AI well in the UK government at the moment? And maybe if I answer that question, I can talk about what the private sector can learn from the public sector and vice versa. So there's quite a few things. We talked about early stages, right? And early stages where government is creating policies and is creating the right infrastructure, the kind of theoretical infrastructure even, to start implementing AI products. What we see on the private sector is that there's a lot of experimentation. Across many businesses, there isn't always much structure around it, and that kind of comes with risk, right? I guess where I'm heading to is it would be really nice to see the public sector taking more calculated risks, but more risks in general, and kind of implementing AI across different departments. Doing that in a way that is engaging with private sector suppliers, right? And I think there is quite a lot of openness to that, to experiment with external providers, not just within the current state of government. I think some of that speed to focus on really executing quick wins and start establishing AI. So there's a whole dimension on AI adoption that we didn't talk about. That's the cultural aspect of organizations getting used to AI as part of the process. I think what we see in the private sector is that businesses are willing to adopt and try and change, whereas they might be a bit more cautious on the public sector and start implementing tools that are not just co-pilot, I guess, is something that probably should be welcomed.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to the next question, I suppose. Someone in the chat has said, what are the primary products being used? We are using Copilot and BMC, Helix GPT, and AI Ops.
So I think we do see across public sector a lot of Copilot, and that is sometimes from, I guess, as a consequence of different government bodies using the Microsoft stack, right? So it kind of has been provided and it becomes part of the ecosystem. We have seen ChatGPT, I think. Gab, I think you've talked about the GovUK chat, which I believe is based on ChatGPT. Other tools, I might kind of defer here to Gabba, whether you've seen anything in your research.
Yeah, I think the research not necessarily focusing on specific departments, what they're using, but I'd maybe point that member of the audience to the Incubator for AI website. They actually have a whole sort of list of different POCs and pilots that they're running at the moment. I think that's all building generative AI products from the ground up, so rather than out the box products. And there's some really interesting use cases there. I think one by the Treasury is actually now being implemented more widely. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think all of those sort of projects are open source. So if you were that way inclined to look at the GitHub repository of that, then you can also look at that. So yeah, I would maybe point that person towards the Incubator for AI for some interesting examples of what's being created.
Great. I think that kind of brings us back to that whole idea of, the intelligence is now there. It's about shaping it to fit your context. It's not necessarily about that, off-the-shelf solution. It's about maybe building something that makes sense. That whole model orchestration, selecting the right model for the right task, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, lots to mull over. Thank you guys very much. And thank you very much to our audience for those questions. Have a lovely sunny day and see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.